What's up, Base Campers? Today I wanted to talk about some Ableton shortcuts that I find really speed up my workflow and cause me to not waste as much time in the menus and clicking around and doing other things that isn't producing and is wasting your time. So let me walk you through some of my favorite shortcuts and we'll see if they'll work for you guys. I think they will. If you really spend the time to find the shortcuts for the commands you use the most, you're just going to be like 2 or 3 times faster than you already are. So I really encourage you guys to not only watch what I'm doing with the shortcuts, but to find your own shortcuts and find ways to make your own workflow more efficient in that manner. So the shortcut I use right off the bat most of the time is getting into the settings menu, and most of the time you'd click up here and go to go here. In fact, I don't even know where it is in here. Is it preferences? Yeah, preferences there. Because I just go command comma, and you just it pops up here. I usually have to change the output device, sometimes the input device, and what have you. But being able to pull this menu up really quickly saves me a lot of time because I don't have to like worry about that at the beginning of my session and just like boom, boom, done. So that's one of my most used ones right off the bat. And then there's inserting a blank MIDI clip. So if you have a track, let's say just this ghost track is a MIDI clip or a MIDI track. So let's say I wanted to add a clip here. Normally you'd have to go to the menu and do something, insert MIDI clip. You'd have to do this and do that, right? Or you'd have to record a MIDI clip on and then drag it out. I used to do this all the time before I knew that you could just go select an area and then Shift Command M, and then all of a sudden you have a new MIDI clip. So that saves a lot of time when you're trying to get ideas down quickly and you don't want to record a MIDI track in or do whatever. So that's a cool little trick too. The next one is grouping tracks. So let's say in this example, I just have like a drum loop of kind of like not really finished this because I wanted to work on it in front of you guys. So here's what I got. So nothing special, just drum loop and some bass stabs. But let's say I wanted to like duplicate this and do some stuff down here that's different, whatever. And these 2 tracks I wanted to group quickly. I could just select them both using Shift to select both and then Command G to group. And then all of a sudden I have both these in a group and I can process them like I would process the bus. Right, so anything that comes out of here is going to come into the group, and then I can put a group processing on here. So I use that a lot. I like to group things a lot. To ungroup things, you just go Shift Command G. It'll ungroup stuff. So definitely use groups, or at least explore using groups if you haven't already tried, because they can organize your project really well too, because you can organize things like by bass, synths, drums, and things as you add more and more elements. But yeah, definitely look at that shortcut, look at the group tracks functionality, powerful stuff there. Next thing I want to talk about is the grid shortcuts. So this is something that I wasn't super aware of for a while, but it's actually really, really powerful. So basically it's all the commands that it's command 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 and 2 will zoom you in and out. So if I just do command 1, you can see the grid's getting finer. If I do command 2, it'll zoom out and you'll get bigger chunks, right? And in fact, right now, I think I hit command 3 before I started. So command 3 will put you on triplet mode or take you out of it. So triplet mode is when you kind of hear the offbeat hi-hats in a song, or anything that sounds a little like the triplet rhythm. And I can just show you a quick example here. Let me bring it back in, zoom in a little bit. There we go. So I just make this one a triplet bass. We'll command 3, and now I can hit the triplet grid and do, let's find, there we go. So you get that, you can get that pretty easily. if you don't know how to use the triplet grid, you'd have to like drag that out, and you'd have to really dial it in, and it's harder. So something to mess with. I know when I discovered that, I had a ton of fun with it. You can make your drops have much more groove if you introduce that rhythm at times. So yeah, those are the grid shortcuts. Also, before I move on from that, if you do Command 4, it'll turn the snapping off, so you can like move these things without snapping, and that can also be cool with rhythm patterns that you want to have a more human feel, or if you're doing like drum arrangement, you can make the drums a little bit offset. It just gives it a little bit more of like a little bit more swag, a little bit more movement. So if you want to hear this versus if I turn it back on, snap it back on. So I mean, it doesn't sound bad either way. It'll give it more vibe if you can start to move things off the grid a little bit, and that's a fast way to do it. So you're not coming in here and having to like tediously do things. The goal here is speed and efficiency, so you're not having to think too much about your creative decisions. So those are the general shortcuts. I have more in the show notes. So if you're watching on YouTube, check the description below. I have a link there. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, go check the show notes out, basecamppodcast.com. This is episode 21 I'm doing this video for. So go check them out for my full list of general shortcuts and just all shortcuts that I use. I also link to the official list there. You could find it by easily Googling too, Ableton Keyboard Shortcuts. But I know when I first started out and I looked at that list, it was pretty overwhelming. There's just a shortcut for everything. So when you look at something with so much information, you tend to just not look at any of it because there's so much. So if you want a little bit more of a boiled down version, go check out my show notes, and you'll see the ones I use most frequently. So let's move on to working with audio type shortcuts. There's a couple here that are really simple but can really be powerful if you know how to use them properly. So first one is reversing clips. I'm sure all of you guys know how to reverse clips in a multitude of different ways. You can do it by right clicking and clicking here. I'm sure there's a menu option somewhere. I don't go that way. I just click R. So it's super simple. R flips it back and forth. And what that allows me to do is if I have like somewhat of a static pattern like this, that's kind of like stagnant, it's the same sample 3 times, you can kind of start to come in here and reverse some stuff. It gives it a little bit more organic human feel to it as you start to move things more finely. So really powerful. Just click on an audio clip and press R. This only works for audio. I don't think it works for MIDI the same way. So just audio hacks here. And then split clip. This is a really cool one too, because let's say I like this pattern, but I want to give it a little bit more movement, right? So I can come in here and let's make sure we're not on the triplet grid. Yeah, there we go. And I can start slicing this up and using the fade knobs to kind of roll off the clicks and stuff, and we can give it a little bit more movement. So you can see slicing really does wonders here. You can move one over here. So I just duplicated there. If you didn't catch that, that's Command D. You can just duplicate stuff. But when you pair these up, like the split and the duplicate, you can start to get really quick with audio, which can be really powerful in making drops and really making anything sample based. If you want to like chop up samples and make it your own, and even if you want to like mess with this drum pattern, let's say we want to like more of a snare hit, we could slice that, and all of a sudden this drum loop that was completely from someone else now becomes a little bit more yours, because you can come in here and slice things up and change hats around and stuff like that. You know, that doesn't sound so good, but you get the point. So next one I want to go over, went over duplicate, split clip. Let's talk about drag and copy. So you can duplicate by pressing Command D, or you can hold Alt or on a Mac Option and copy stuff like that. And I find this really cool because you can do that, you copy it out, and then if you hold Command, you can start to slide it, and you can put it exactly where you want it. So I find that it's just easier once you start to understand the concept of dragging and copying, because then you can start to populate a channel really fast with a pattern and start to manipulate it quicker. So that's a cool little trick. Whoops. And then let's move on to deactivating clips. So let's say I have way too much stuff going on. Let's just make this more crowded. And I'm just like, I don't know, this isn't working. Maybe even make this crazier. So just too much going on, right? So maybe I want to just try it without this. If you select some clips, it can be audio or MIDI, and just press 0. It'll deactivate stuff. And then you can start to like bring things back in. It doesn't work, but you get the point. You can come in here and you can completely fill up everything and then just start to deactivate things and maybe get some cool results. So just another cool tool to use. And then one last thing I want to talk about before we move on to MIDI stuff is if you have an audio clip and you have to make sure the warp mode's on. So if your warp mode isn't on by default when you pull a sample in, you just have to go to the settings and then make sure under record, warp, and launch that you have warp short samples. I think you want warped one shot. And then auto warp long samples, that make sure that's on. This isn't a good setting for everything. Like when I'm doing podcasting type stuff, I don't want it to warp things, so I usually turn this off. But when you're doing like drop writing and making tracks, this is definitely something you want to keep on. And it allows you to do stuff like this. So if you hold shift and you just drag, it warps it for you. You don't have to come in here and warp things in the clip. You can just, on the arrangement view, just warp it however you'd like. So if you wanted to take up all the space. And it also allows you to add a little bit of a different tone to everything too. So if you have the same sample, if you just kind of like warp things a little bit differently, it starts to become a little bit more organic. So something that's something I use a lot. So let's just do it over here to drive the point home. We'll do that one short, we'll do this one long, and then we'll do this one short. We'll roll this off too. So that's all the same sample, but because I warped it all a little bit differently, it sounds more unique, more organic. So definitely mess around with that warp by dragging type stuff. Next thing I want to go over, let's talk about some MIDI things. So I'm going to make a new MIDI track by doing Shift Command T. And if you wanted to make a new audio track, it's just Command T. Those are also very useful shortcuts. But for the MIDI track, let's populate it with some sort of synth or piano. I'm going to go with the piano. And the way I select things in my project, I don't go over here and click anything. I press Command F, and then I search piano. And depending on how much stuff you have, you might come up with a crazy amount of stuff. But I just find this is way more easy than clicking in and doing stuff. Let's do grand piano. There it is. So it just makes things quicker. You don't have to come in here and click instrument and unfold a bunch of menu items. It's just grand piano, and it's right there. And when you do this, it's searching, when you have all results selected, it's searching through everything you have plugged in here. So any folders you've included in Ableton as from default or by default, such as your sample libraries, your plugins, all this stuff, it's searching through all of this stuff. So anything you have added here, it's going to be adding that to your search query as a possible result. So if you're wondering why I'm getting a bunch of crazy stuff when I type grand piano, it's because I have sample packs that have grand piano in the title. So this won't appear for all of you. If you don't have a lot of folders here, you're not going to have a lot of this mess. But you know, you can't win every battle. I think even though I have a bunch of folders and a bunch of noise with my files, I still find this is more effective than clicking in and finding things manually. It's just faster. So with that out of the way, let's come in here and we'll make a new MIDI clip by Shift Command M. And we'll just drag this off because it's not going to fit that bass pattern. And let's just play some stuff in because I want to show you some quantizing tricks too. So we'll just record arm this, do that, and then activate in MIDI. So what I did there is by pressing M, you toggle the keyboard, keyboard. So basically you're playing the piano roll on your keyboard. So activate that by pressing M, and then yep, we're good. So then we'll record. So we got something here. Let's dive into this. Let's select all. And if you want to quantize, you can just do Command U, right? And I didn't really play to any metronome, so it's not going to snap it perfectly. In fact, let me just redo this and do it to the metronome so you can see the example properly. So yeah, that's going to be a little off. So we'll do Command A, select all, Command U, quantize. And then you can see it's all quantized. I played this one a little too late, so it came the wrong direction. We'll just put it back there. Let's just undo this and show you a trick that I learned in EPROM's live stream, where if you select all and then Shift Command U, you do this quantize by settings, and then you can start to quantize by an amount. So it's not going to snap it directly to the grid. It's going to snap it almost there. 100% would be all the way, and then 0% would be no snap. So you can kind of maintain some of your human performance in when you're playing stuff into your MIDI keyboard and stuff if you don't all crank it all the way to 100. So this is a cool trick that I use sometimes. So if you see that, it's not going to snap it all the way to the grid. It's just going to get it part of the way there. So yeah, that's a cool little MIDI trick. Other than that, in here you can do the same things as audio, such as like dragging and copying. So if I hold Option, I can copy these notes, get something real quick there. Can duplicate, just get a quick little pattern. So if you can speed up your stuff in the MIDI roll, it's less overwhelming because you're not staring at a blank screen for as long. You can just get notes in there and start rearranging them right. And then same thing with the audio. You can bypass snapping by holding Command, or sorry, what is it? Yeah, so you got to click it first and then hold Command, and then you can drag it along, or you can just press the Command 4 and then turn the grid completely off. Turn it back on there. And then to adjust velocity, you can just hold Command and then drag up and down. So that's a good trick rather than having to go down here and then mess with this. Just Command and then up and down. So those are my MIDI tricks. I don't work in MIDI as much as I do audio, but with melodic stuff, sometimes you don't have a choice. So it's good to know those things as well. So that's pretty much it for the favorite shortcuts I wanted to highlight. I wanted to highlight one more thing before I sign off here. If you go to the show notes, I show you how to do custom keyboard shortcuts. So basically, you can create keyboard shortcuts that don't exist by default in Ableton. And I've only done two keyboard shortcuts custom like this, and that's freeze track and flatten track, because I hate having to right click and click freeze track, and then after that click flatten track. So what I do is I've made my shortcut Option Command F for freeze. So that's going to freeze the track, and then Control Option Command F for flatten. So now this is all flattened. So if I had any processing on this, it'd be gone. It would all be baked into the audio. And this is really valuable for if you're doing resampling or you're doing a lot of bass processing and you don't, it's hogging your CPU and you just want to print it as is. You can just do that really quick and you don't have to think about it. So cool trick there. And you can create a shortcut for anything in the menu up here that doesn't have a shortcut already. You just have to follow the directions in the show notes that I have, and then add the command you want, and you're good to go. So check that out. Really valuable piece of, or really valuable tool for the Mac, that you can do that. And on Windows, there's plenty of programs that allow you to do similar things. So check that out. Hope you guys found this episode helpful. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know. Reach out to me at Darkest Dawn, DRKST DWN everywhere, or Basecamp Pod on Instagram, and I'm be happy to, answer your questions, fulfill your episode requests, anything you want. Let me know. I'm here to help. So, thanks guys for listening to this week's episode of Basecamp. We'll see you next week. Peace.